Recently, there's been a lot of talk about banning TikTok in the US. This all started with President Trump back in 2020 when his administration wanted to ban a few Chinese apps, including TikTok and WeChat. According to Forbes, he and other officials have cited national security concerns for doing this, publicly expressing worry that the Chinese-owned company will share user data with the Chinese government. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the ban never went into effect, and the whole matter was kind of dropped until recently when Senator Marco Rubio introduced new legislation that would block all transactions from any social media company in or under the influence of China, Russia, and a few other countries. So what is going on? I want to look at why the US is trying to ban TikTok, the possibility of a ban, and what would happen if it is banned. Let's first start with why the US wants to ban TikTok. The whole debate is over data, and where it is being stored, who can access it, and how it is being used. The US government doesn't want the Chinese government to track and store data on US citizens. This isn't hard to understand. China does the same thing. That is why many American apps aren't available in China. This falls under the heading of national security. But does TikTok share information with Beijing? TikTok has said that they do not send data to Beijing, but this isn't entirely true. According to a TikTok spokesperson, since beginning transparency reporting in 2019, we have received 0 data requests from the Chinese government. This was the company's line until recently when it was revealed that data was accessible by TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, in Beijing. According to Mashable, despite the repeated assurances that TikTok's parent company isn't checking out data collected about users in the US and Europe, it looks like the company absolutely does and can. TikTok's head of privacy in Europe, Elaine Fox, told employees, based on a demonstrated need to do their job, subject to a series of robust security controls and approval protocols, and by way of methods that are recognized under the GDPR, we allow certain employees within our corporate group located in Brazil, Canada, China, Israel, Japan, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, and the United States remote access to TikTok European user data. This shouldn't really come as a surprise to anyone because of course the engineers and software developers would need to access data to build and update the app. TikTok sends data to Beijing, and if requested, they will turn that data over to the Chinese government. This is no different than any other country that complies with their country's laws. In the US, big tech companies have complied with 85% of the government's requests for user information in the first half of 2020, according to an Associated Press report. If the US companies are complying with the US government 85% of the time, you can expect the same or higher compliance in more authoritarian countries. According to stats, TikTok has over 1 billion monthly active users and around 100 million monthly active users in the US, equaling around 37% of America's 267.6 million mobile internet users. That means the app is collecting a ton of data on American citizens. To start, TikTok receives names, ages, phone numbers, and emails when people sign up for the service. The app also knows users' approximate locations and mobile device identifiers such as IP addresses. The app can also collect user behavior within the app. That is why the For You page is so addictive. All this information, if weaponized, could be a real threat to national security, which is why some countries like India have already banned the app. After seeing how Cambridge Analytica was able to influence the 2016 election with less data, it isn't surprising to see why governments around the world are asking questions about apps and how data are being used. Now that we know the why, we have to talk about the possibility of a TikTok ban in the US. Will TikTok be banned in the US? This is a tough question to answer at this point in time, but if I had to make a guess, I would say yes, it will be banned in the future. Why do I think that? Well, it seems the only thing both parties can agree on is that China is the biggest threat to US global dominance, and both parties are willing to work together to counter China. China has long been at war with the US, and finally the US is waking up to this fact, which means the next few decades will be the deciding phases of this conflict for global dominance. The current stages of this conflict are contained to propaganda, espionage, sabotage, and cyber warfare, which means TikTok is a major target because it is the only successful Chinese app to penetrate the US and global markets. Regardless of if it is currently being used to push certain narratives or propaganda, it has the potential to be used that way, which is why it will most likely be banned in the future. President Trump and his team saw this years ago, and despite Trump's shortcomings, he was right to focus on China. With quotes from senators like Josh Hawley saying TikTok is a Trojan horse for the Chinese Communist Party, it's a major security risk for the United States, and until it is forced to sever ties with China completely, it has no place on government devices. States across the US are banning TikTok on government devices. It's time for Joe Biden and the Democrats to help do the same. It is clear that there is a desire to ban this app, and I think the bill will pass. Nobody in the US government wants to look soft on China, which means this legislation will probably pass if it is not weighed down by other more partisan issues. There is a lot of hate towards China and the Chinese government right now in the US, and many people are looking for a scapegoat for the last few years of hardship. China fits that bill, and politicians will use that to generate more votes and pass laws. If Marco Rubio's bill doesn't pass, another one will be drafted and presented. I don't think this issue is going away in the near future. So what happens if and when a bill gets passed to ban TikTok? I think a few smaller things will happen first, and one bigger, more concerning trend will continue. Let's talk about the smaller consequences first. I think China will retaliate against the US by banning some apps or sites. Of course, there aren't many apps or sites left to ban because many US sites are already blocked in China, but they will find something to block or ban. This is a smaller issue, but a typical response from the Chinese government. We will also see a flood of TikTokers onto YouTube and Instagram, which will be interesting to watch. We saw this happen when Vine shut down, and I think we'll see it again if TikTok gets banned in the US. But those are smaller issues and not really concerning. The bigger issue has to do with Splinternet. Currently, the internet is breaking and countries are becoming more insular. The internet was designed to bring knowledge and communication to the world, but 40 years on, and it seems governments are no longer interested in open communication. So what is Splinternet? The idea of a Splinternet is not new, although the exact manner by which it is becoming a reality is evolving. The concept of a single global internet is breaking down. At the digital level, this is because of efforts by countries like China and Russia to build national firewalls, and at a physical level, this has to do with who controls the backbone or the underwater cables that enable the internet.
There is a larger and disturbing trend where governments directly interfere with the internet, attempting to score short-term political points with regards to the without regard to the long-term damage that this can cause to the internet.
Because if you ban one app, why not ban 20 apps or all the apps that you don't like? The US will become like China and block out anything that doesn't praise the US and its government. It is a slippery slope, and although I don't agree with banning apps or sites, I still find myself siding with the US on this one. China has blocked American apps for years on the basis of national security, and I agree with their decision because social media and misinformation is powerful. That is why I think the US should ban TikTok, because if weaponized, it could cause a lot of damage within the US. But I'm torn on this topic because a fractured internet doesn't help create more empathy and understanding for other cultures and people. If you never see content or news from around the world, you'll believe what you're being told by the powers that control the Splinternets. You'll be getting a small fraction of the whole picture and not even know because you are being forced onto an intranet by your country or ideology. This is where I should push a VPN, but I don't have any sponsors. Jokes aside, this is a major problem that every country needs to focus on in the next decade, because it is only getting worse, and once we break and fracture into Splinternets, it will be much harder to put it back together again. So I want to pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts on the potential TikTok ban? Do you think it is an eye for an eye, and China has been blocking things for years, so the US should do the same, or do you think it is wrong to block apps? Also, what do you think of the bigger problem of a splinternet and controlled networks that censor everything? Leave a comment below because I find this really interesting and I would love to know your thoughts on it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this in the future. And if you're looking for something else to watch, this video might be interesting to you. I would love to see you over there.